What is one thing in your 50s that you're amazed that you did, or something challenging?
I have one, and I didn't realize it was challenging as it has become. But so I'm, fine in my business. My husband and I have our own business, and I decided to put myself. I'm a very quiet, not quiet. I shouldn't say that quiet. I'm a very inward person. I don't expose myself at all. I don't put myself out on social media, anything of that like that. And in, the last year, decided that I was going to do this business. And I had to put myself out there. And oh my God, that was so challenging. That is still very, very challenging. If you had said a year ago that I would have put myself on a YouTube video with my face on camera, and, I think I snorted the last video, I would have said, there's no way. And it was the biggest mountain for me. And someone else could hear that and go, what's the big deal? But for me to put my opinion, to put my voice, to put my appearance out there, knowing that, especially right now in this day and age, social media and all that, could just totally tear me down. And I said, no, you know what? I want to really do this now and allow myself to feel what it feels like to be exposed a little more outside of my immediate circle, my friends and family. Like, we've all made great connections, and I wanted to see how that was. And so for me, this was a huge challenge. This was just an amazing challenge for me. And I could have easily said to myself, you know what? You're in your 50s. What do you need to do that for? Like, you're on your way out. You know what I mean? You can wind up your business. You go, your kids are, moving out and all that stuff. Do you need to do this? So that was a huge challenge for me.
Well, I'm glad you took that leap. Personally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Kudos to you.
Yeah. You have so much value to give in your niche of what your knowledge is in. Like, you've helped us in our group, in our mastermind group. You do bring so much value. And I think the one point that you said, I'm on my way out, is I'd like to, if I could do one thing, is stop people from saying and I know you didn't mean it that way.
No, but it's true.
We're not on our way out. And that's the hugest mindset for me also, that we have to stop doing. And so I applaud you for coming forward, because like I said, I'm happy that you came forward, because we bound this friendship here,
right?
And we built those other friendships.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Tracy, what about you?
Mine actually is a huge life event that took place for me in my 50s, and that was when I donated my liver to my sister-in-law. So yeah, that was pretty incredible, actually. The whole process from the time that I said, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then everything that took place from that moment, all the testing, all the discussions. I mean, I had to see psychologists, I had to see all sorts of different people to make sure I was like mentally okay, and what if it doesn't work, and like all of these things. And interestingly enough, like the dynamic of what that looked like for my home life, because Megan was, I don't know, she was like, I don't know, 12 or something at the time, 13 maybe. And it was like, there was no question, there was a huge risk. I mean, I could have died in that operation. I really could have. And I just, it's funny when you're, as the person going through things, you're not viewing it from the outside. Like you're not recognizing what other people are thinking, what other people are experiencing when you tell them this is what you're doing. It's sort of like matter of fact. It's like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing and I got to go for this test, that. It's just sort of like your daily life thing. And I had to really manage my mind. I guess if there was any time I did any kind of mind work, that would have been it. I was obviously introduced to all of this thought work and coaching and all of that stuff, much further down the line, but I really had to manage my brain during that time, because you could go down a rabbit hole very, very quickly. And if I had of, it wouldn't have happened. I would have just, pulled the plug and said, no, I'm not doing it. So yeah, that was probably one of the, most challenging things that I did in my 50s.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
But how do you go from hearing that your sister-in-law, right?
Yeah.
Needed this to like, I'm like, to even get to that thought where you go, I'm considering it. Was it immediate, or did it roll around? Like, how did you?
No, it was pretty immediate. I remember we were visiting her at her place. I don't know, I think it was her birthday, and we were visiting her, and she was saying that she was really quite concerned that they were talking about her having to have a liver transplant. And she was like, oh, I need to find somebody who's like A negative. And I remember thinking, I'm A negative, I could do this.
Wow.
Like, just like that. I'm A negative, I could do this. And then I thought about it. I didn't know what was involved. Like, in all honesty, the naivety of me at that point was like, what does that even look like? I don't even know what that means, right? And I can remember I remember I was working late one time in downtown Toronto. I was doing telephone training for a company, and I called up Toronto General or Mount Sinai, I can't remember the hospital, but whatever the hospital was. And I asked to speak to the liver coordinator, and I started asking her all these questions, like what's involved and all of this stuff. And I hadn't like told anybody in my family that this was even a consideration at this point. And she was so good on the phone, and she started telling me about the stats and all the people who pull out and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, what does that actually mean, people pull out? She said, well, if you tell me at the end of this conversation that we're not going any further, this stat would be that you're pulling out. And I was like, oh, I don't want that to happen. So I can remember going home and just saying to my husband, I really think we need to do this. Like, my sister-in-law had a daughter that was just a few months older than my daughter. And I just kept thinking, what if she has to grow up without a mom? Like what would that look like? Like, that's just like, it's terrible. What if she doesn't, have all of those experiences with her mom? I lost my mom when I was really young, so I know what that felt like. And I didn't want her to go through that. Nor did I want my sister-in-law to not experience all of those things that potentially she could have, so yeah, so I just kind of I went down that road and just said, this is what I'm going to do.
How long was the process?
I decided in August that I was going to do it, and the operation, they fast-tracked the whole situation because my sister-in-law was quite ill. They fast-tracked the whole situation, and I was donating my liver at the end of October 24th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they got me through the whole system very, very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
mess with your mind though.
It's really weird though, because what the hardest part was, you're going in, like, I mean, normally when you go to the hospital, you're not well, right? So I'm walking into the hospital, and I'm totally healthy. Like, I'm like really super healthy, and I'm feeling great. And it's like, they tell you things like, I can remember sitting there and they said, okay, like after the operation, when you get discharged, you're going to be like sleeping 18 hours a day. Just, you need to prepare for what's going to happen when you get home. And I remember looking at the guy and I was like, I don't have time for that. Like, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. That's not going to be my reality. And No, they just kind of nodded and I was like, okay. And sure enough, I came home from the hospital and yeah, like you can't do anything. Like I'm sleeping 18 hours a day and totally okay with that. Totally okay with the 18 hours a day. Yeah. So it's so interesting because you wake up the next morning and you're not feeling good and you're like, ooh, this is like, I was okay yesterday, but I'm not okay
Right.
today, Yeah. Yeah. But people have said, would you do it again? I'm like, absolutely, I would do it again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she passed away. She had a year after the transplant took place. And but I would do it again in a heartbeat. Not that I can, but
Right.
I
Mhm.
would.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's the most challenging thing. That's the most challenging thing I think I've done in my entire life, actually.
Wow. Okay, I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are going to think I'm going to say my race, but it's not. So I, as you know, resided in Connecticut. That's where I've always been. That's where my kids were. Well, one had moved to Vermont. My stepchildren they were building their lives, the whole thing. And the company I worked for actually shut the doors. And the company that purchased them was moving the company to Wisconsin. And so I was one of 3 people that was offered a position out here. And the remaining 75 were being laid off. They were being terminated. And why this was so challenging for me was, one, it was out of the norm. Nobody in my family has ever got up to move because they were offered a position in another state. I was leaving my children. They were older. They had their lives in order. They had their homes. They had their lives. They were building. I was moving out. At that time, I was married. So I was going out as the breadwinner, which was totally different because I wasn't the breadwinner in the dynamics in Connecticut. He was making the more money, but I was going to end up going. It was a very big shift in dynamics there. And I think it was just totally scary because when I sat down even to tell my parents, like my mom and my stepdad, the first reaction from my stepdad was, well, come down to Florida. If you don't have a job and you want to move, come to Florida. You can live by us and I'll get you into he worked for the county. I can get you into the county. So it was that parent taking care of you.
Yeah.
And then I went to see my dad, and my stepmom was alive at the time. And they lived in Connecticut. And I sat down and I was telling my dad the whole thing. And he looked at me and he said, go. I've never had that opportunity. Go. I want you to go and enjoy. And so that was challenging because this was a whole new,
Mhm.
I mean, I want to say the matriarch of the family within the dynamics of my step family and bringing the children together. I'm the one who always did the big thing, Christmas dinners. I'm the one in the summertime that always would have all these different parties. I'm the one who would do, and I was literally ending all of that and changing all of that. So it was challenging, but I wanted to do it to show my children and my grandchildren that because where you live or what you're doing doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. Like you can do anything you want in the world and still be part of a family. And to this day, I'm so grateful that I did it because through there, so many other changes have happened. So I think that was the start of the transformation of Michele.
Mm,
Wow.
awesome.
Did you know you were so valued in that company? Or was
No.
that So that was a big shock in
That
itself.
was a shock. And at that time, I was the call center manager, and they were bringing me out here to become a product manager. So it wasn't even a position I knew. Like, this was all brand new. They were bringing me out to learn a whole new, but it was because of my expertise within understanding the customer. And
Right.
it was a catalog company with a call center that they brought me out, because then I would understand the products. They could teach me how to bring products in, but then I would understand what products were needed from the voice of the customer.
Right.
So that was a whole nother experience, because ultimately the company that had bought the first company was actually owned by a huge conglomerate. And when I said yes, I would move, I got this huge contract. And like, there was this big truck came in and packed up my whole house. Like, I didn't move a thing. Like, my car was picked up and wrapped and taken
Wow.
out to the Midwest. I was giving housing for 6 months, completely burned. Like, it was like, I was like, holy
Oh, I like this.
like, wow. You know, and so kind of spoiled. But yeah, so no, I did not. I figured I was just being laid off with everyone else.
And so what kept you going while you second guessed your decision, or you never second guessed your decision?
I never second guessed my decision.
I'm talking between the transition, like you never said, you were like, this is where I need to go, or did you second guess it at all, where you're like,
Oh, of course I second guessed it, of course, because I was going into an unknown territory. And I do think it was divine intervention, that, because I have had thoughts of, I wonder what if I said no. I probably, to be really honest, I probably wouldn't have realized the toxic relationship I was in.
That was actually going to be my question. What have you ever reflected on? What if I hadn't made that decision? Yeah.
You know, I have reflected on that from time to time. And maybe it could be when I see one of my children or my stepchildren struggling with something. Gee, I wonder if I stayed in Connecticut, would it have been different? And then I think I would have been just doing the same cycle of everything was going through. And I don't think myself or my children or stepchildren would have seen the possibilities of you can change and what you can be and what is not a good relationship, and then learn what a good relationship is.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally makes sense,
So many amazing life lessons there for your kids.
Yes.
And also just to show them the possibilities of what can be is like, I mean, that's amazing. It always, go ahead, sorry.
And even my grandchildren, at that time, I only had two. And her, my granddaughter, her and I, she is my stepdaughter's daughter, and her and I were attached at the hip. I don't mean attached at the hip. I mean attached at the hip. This girl was with me all the time. And she was 9 when I left. And I would fly her out to Wisconsin to spend a couple of weeks with me. And I'll never forget it. I flew to Connecticut to pick her up, to go on the plane, because I wasn't letting her on the plane by herself. She came on the plane. We got off the plane. She walked to my car and she saw the Wisconsin license plate. She swung around, put her hands on her hip, and she said, "Huh, guess this means you're not coming home." I was like, no. But we still have a close relationship. So it was just that whole transition aspect, you know.
So
I just think it's
cool.
really amazing too about, like, you know, that fear, right? The fear of the unknown. You're going in, and I don't know, sometimes I think of that always when we're younger, but every stage in your life, there's the fear of the unknown, of you doing or something that is completely out of the norm for you. And that, I think that's pretty amazing. Like, that's a lot of changes. That's not one. That's
No,
that-
it
that's
was not.
all at
And
the
it
same
was,
time.
I moved out here in September 12th. And exactly 1 month later, I turned 50. So I was going into a whole new career later on in life.
Yeah. Trailblazer.
Yes. 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 It's amazing the decisions that we make though, that we have no idea the impact of what that decision is going to be. We try to figure out, oh, if I make this decision, I think this and this and this is going to happen, but we never really know. And it's just, I mean, some of the decisions we make are completely life-changing, you know? Yeah. It's, I always love that, how you think, oh, well, you know, this is a fork in the road. And sometimes we make the decision without even thinking about it. It's just like, oh yeah, sure, this is what I'm going to do. And you've just changed the trajectory of your life completely. You know,
Yes.
it's amazing when that happens.
It is.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you as a regular member of our community.